Hi guys, and welcome to this class, and today we are going to be starting our pain pathway as promised. So let's pick up our paper and our pen and let's get started. Hi guys. Yeah, welcome back. And now we said we are going to be talking about the pain pathway. Pain pathway. Now, what is the meaning of that? The word pain, we understand that already. The word pathway means the passage. So, a passageway for something. So, if you say pain pathway, it means the pain passageway. So, let's say you are struck with a knife, maybe in your hands, your trunk, your leg, or you mistakenly step on a nail actually. So, how are you going to perceive the pain? So, from that your leg, how are you going to get the consciousness into your brain? As in, how are you going to get the impulse into your brain to know that you're what? You're hurt. That is what we'll be discussing on the pain pathway. And now, the pain pathway is divided into two. The first one is called the ascending pain pathway. Ascending pain pathway. And the second one is called the descending pain pathway. Descending pain pathway. And now, what is the meaning of that? We said pain pathway is actually divided into two. Now, the ascending pathway and the what? And the descending pathway. What is the meaning of that? The word ascending is from the word ascendi, and I think that is from French origin actually. So the word ascending means to go up. To go what? To go up. And then the descending pathway is from descendi as usual as well. So from that French word descendi, which means to come down. To come what? To come down. And now what's the meaning of that? It means pain used to go up. And ask yourself, where do you think it's going to? Up. That is just a single place, which is the brain. So the ascending pathway is focused on running down straight up to the what? To the brain. And then your brain will tell you that you're in pain. And that is perception. Perception. So the perception and interpretation of the pain. So the function of this ascending pathway in short is what? Is perception of pain. For you to know that you are in what? That you are in pains. As simple as that. And then the descending pathway is coming down. And now the question is, where is it coming to? Normally, it's coming down. After the brain, you have what next in your CNS? The spinal cord. So it's coming down to the structure called the spinal cord. And now, what will happen to the spinal cord? The spinal cord is going to do something called modulation. It's going to modulate the pain. So modulation is actually talking about reduction in the perception. Reduction in what? In perception of pain. Reduction in perception of pain. Simple as that. That's what you need to know that is branchings. Now, let's get into thick med-surg, into thick anatomy and physiology. Now, keep recap. We said the pain pathway is divided into two. The ascending pathway and the what? And the descending pathway. Ascending is from the word ascendi, which is from French origin, and it means to go up. It means the pain can go upward to meet an organ called the brain. And just to do what? To sense it. As simple as that. In a process called perception. So the function of the ascending pathway is the perception of pain. As simple as that. And now the function of the descending pathway, which means to go down, is come back into the spinal cord. And the function is to do what? Is to modulate the pain. And modulate means what? To reduce the perception. So reduction of perception of pain. As simple as that. Now, let's get started with the ascending pathway. I'll be right back. Yeah, welcome back. And now, let's get started with the ascending pain pathway. Now, let's assume that we have an individual here. Now, this individual, let's assume this is the person's trunk. So, the person's back. Now, this is the point. Let's assume that this person is thrust or thrusted with a nail at this region of the body. What do you think will happen? The ascending pathway, which means impulse must leave this place and run to the brain. But the question is how? Now, let's take a look. Now, this is the skin, right? I'm going to bring the skin right here. So this is the person's trunk, like this place. So now you already know that, okay, let me not do this now. You already know that the skin is made up of cells, right? So these are the cells of the skin. This is the epidermis now. Epidermis has no nerve cells. So there is no nerve cell actually. So the point is that this second layer is the dermis of the body. Dermis of the skin rather. And we have cells there, coupled with what? With the neurons, the nerve endings. So now this is your neuron, this is your cell body now. And then these are your dendron and your dendrites. Dendron and dendrites. Then you have your what? You have your axon. As simple as that. Now, this very part, if we magnify it, this will be what we have. And we have that nail thrusting this part of the person's abdomen. As simple as that. Now, what will happen? When this person is thrusted with a nail, this cell is going to be damaged. And when it is damaged, it is going to send a message called impulse. But which impulse? Impulse of pain. Impulse of what? Of pain. It's going to send the impulse of pain to the what? To this receptive dendrite. And from this receptive dendrite, it will go into the receptive dendron. And from the receptive dendron, it will go into the cell body. I hope you know that actually from our previous class. Sorry about that, please. So then the impulse will enter into the axon like this. And now where is it going to? Everything I'm doing right here is right from this nail, and the impulse is coming to the spinal cord. So if it is coming to the spinal cord, I told you we cut the spinal cord cross-sectionally. I mean in a transverse manner actually. So what I'm going to have? We have the structure that I told you about in our very first class. I told the structure is called the what? The gray matter, right? And I told you that the gray matter is bounded or surrounded by something else called the what? The white matter. So we have the ventral column, dorsal column, and the lateral columns, right? So I told you that we have some kind of horn right here, but we use root for it on the other way around. So same thing to all these sides like this. But we don't need the other ones. This is all we need. Now I'll try to rub some parts off here. So the point is that this neuron is going to ascend a little bit like this. So this is the axon of that neuron, right? And then it's going to enter like this, into this place, where it forms the terminal dendron and terminal dendrites, coupled with the what? The synaptic knobs. So let's come back a little bit. Whenever you are thrusted with the what, a nail or a knife or any sharp object, the point is that the cell that is damaged will send the impulse of pain to the receptive dendrite of the first neuron, and then into the what? Into this receptive dendron. And from the receptive dendron, it goes into the what? Into the cell body. From the cell body, it goes into the what? Into the axon. And from the axon, the impulse will pass through this place called the dorsal root of the spinal cord. And then it passes into the what? Into the posterior horn right here. And from the posterior horn into the gray matter of the spinal cord here. And within the gray matter, the impulse will go into the what? The impulse will go straight up into the terminal dendron. And from the terminal dendron into the what? Into the terminal dendrite. From the terminal dendrite into the what? It goes into the synaptic knob. And once the impulse is in the synaptic knob, for someone with the knowledge of synapse that I told you about and neurotransmitters, the point is that inside these what? Inside this synaptic knob, we have some chemical there called the what? Neurotransmitter. But for pain, the neurotransmitter that is used, the neurotransmitter, the impulse sender that sends the impulse of pain is called substance P. Substance what? Substance P. So substance P is the neurotransmitter here. Substance P is the post office, and it's going to take the impulse out of this what? Synaptic knob into what? Into the receptive dendrite of another neuron. So the impulse will come on the what? Receptive dendrite of another neuron. And from there, the impulse will continue going. and then it will go into the what? Receptive dendron of another neuron, and then next it comes into the cell body, from the cell body into the axon. And what will happen next? It is going to branch like this into the white matter of the spinal cord. Now, before proceeding, I would like to do a quick recap. Now, this is the point. Remember, I told you from our first class that you can have a neuron on top like this, and then the next line follow it is another neuron below. And still is going to meet up with another neuron until they are done. So the point is that I told you from that first video that impulse is going to get onto the receptive dendrites, and from there into the receptive dendron, and from there into the cell body, from there into the axon, from there to the terminal dendron, from terminal dendron to the terminal dendrites, from terminal dendrites into the synaptic knob. And I told you we have some kind of chemical inside the synaptic knob called the neurotransmitter. And from the word neuro, it means impulse. Transmitter means sender. The point is they send message, they send impulse. And I told you this arrow are the impulses, right? So it's going to bring the arrow onto the next neuron receptive dendrite, and then to the dendron again, and then follow the same sequence. And same thing will still happen at this junction. I told you these spaces are called what? They are called synapse. And now, exactly the same thing is happening from our skin. So whenever you actually encounter some kind of injury, the cells that are damaged, they are going to what? They are going to send the impulse of pain onto the receptive dendrite of this first neuron. And after that, they will send the impulse into their receptive dendron, and from the receptive dendron to the what? Into the cell body. From the cell body, it goes into their axon, following the same tracks, and it will pass through the dorsal root of the spinal cord, and then to the what? Into the anterior, into the posterior on rather. From the posterior on, it enters into the gray matter of the spinal cord, the H-shaped part actually. And from there, it goes into the terminal dendron, terminal dendrite, and to the synaptic knob. Now, the neurotransmitter within the synaptic knob of what? Of this neuron is going to do what? It's going to release a substance called the substance P, and that is the name of that neurotransmitter. And the substance P will carry the impulse into the next neuron receptive dendrite, and from there into the receptive dendron, and from there into the cell body. And now, you know normally that the space between two neurons is called the synapse, right? But in pain pathway, this very space where all this exchange occurred is called the substantial gelatinosa. Substantial what? Gelatinosa. As simple as that. So instead of calling it a synapse, you call it what? Instead of calling this a synapse like that, you call it what? You call it the substantial gelatinosa. And instead of calling these neurotransmitters as neurotransmitter, you call them what here? You call them substance P. They are also neurotransmitter. Neurotransmitter is just like a family of chemicals. So they are chemical messenger actually. So you have substance P for carrying pain. And we also have other neurotransmitters like that, like serotonin, also called the 5-hydroxytryptamine. So we have things like GABA, gamma-aminobutyric acid. We have things like acetylcholine, we have things like dopamine, we have things like prostaglandin, etc. We have tons of them like that. I can list 15 at least for you right here. But let's not waste our time. So the point is that whenever you are inflicted by any kind of pain or an injury, the point is that there's going to be an impulse of pain generated. But the question is, how was the impulse of pain generated? Forget about that. Now let's view the physiology of pain, you understand better. So the point is that this receptive dendrite will receive that impulse of pain, and it will transmit the impulse of pain to the what? Into the terminal dendrite. Terminal dendrite takes to the terminal dendron. Receptive dendron. And from there into the cell body. From the cell body into the axon. The axon will pass through the dorsal root of the spinal cord and the anterior on of the spinal cord into the gray matter of the spinal cord. And within the gray matter, they are going to go into somewhere called substantial gelatinosa. You can add another thing to it. They also call it substantial gelatinosa of Rolando. As simple as that. Now let's proceed. So the impulse will go into the what? It will go into the cell body of the second neuron. And the second neuron will cross out of the gray matter into this part called the what? The white matter. As simple as that. And once it is inside the white matter, where is it going to? It will just ascend upward. It will go up. And when it goes up, where is it going to? It is coming into a structure of the cerebrum, a structure of the brain called the thalamus. The thalamus what? The thalamus. And now, let me come back a little bit again. I said this neuron will pass through the dorsal root and anterior and posterior on into the gray matter of the spinal cord. But then it is coming to a place in the spinal cord called the substantia gelatinosa of Rolando. And within that space, this synaptic node will transmit these impulses coming from this neuron through a neurotransmitter called the substance P, and they will take it onto the what? The receptive dendrite of the next neuron. and then that next neuron will cross into the white matter of the spinal cord, and it will go up. And because it's going up, I told you, it is called the ascending pathway. Ascending what? Ascending pathway. Ascending pathway. So this ascending pathway, it is made up of a tract, and that tract is called what? Look up. Simply because this place where this ascending pathway is coming from is the spinal cord. This ascending pathway starts with the spinal cord here. So spinal what? Spinal cord. And now it is going where? Into the thalamus. So they gave this ascending pathway a name, a tract rather, and that tract is called spinal thalamic tract. For full, spinal thalamic tract. And what's the meaning of that? A tract means a passage. So it means a passage between the spinal cord, that is the spine, and the thalamus. So this passage here is the spinal thalamic tract. Spinal thalamic tract. That is the tract between the spinal cord and the what? And the thalamus. So the tract is going to let that impulse ascend up to go up in the ascending pathway, and it's going to end up in the what? In the thalamus. As simple as that. Now tell me, which part of a neuron is this? Check it carefully. This is the axon, the longest part of a neuron. And if this is the axon, it means it is going to form what in the thalamus? It will form the terminal dendron, and the terminal dendrite again, and then the synaptic knob. As simple as that. Now, what will happen next? I would like to rub the board and continue my diagram from the spinal cord. But a quick recap, just one more time. The point is that whenever we have a thrusting injury or any kind of injury, or we are inflicted on, the point is that there's going to be generation of impulse by damaged cells. So damaged cell will send that impulse to the receptive dendrite of the neuron, and the neuron will send it down into the what? Receptive dendron. From the receptive dendron into the cell body into the axon, from the axon through the dorsal root and the posterior on, it goes into the what? The brain matter of the spinal cord. And within the brain matter of the spinal cord, there's a space called the what? Substantia gelatinosa of Rolando. And within it, the impulse will run from the terminal dendron into the terminal dendrite, and from there to the synaptic knob. And we have a solution inside the synaptic knob, a neurotransmitter called substance P. And it is going to what? It is going to transmit that impulse onto the receptive dendrite of this second neuron here. And then the second neuron will cross into the white matter of the spinal cord, and it will ascend in the ascending pathway, which is made up of something called the what? The spinal thalamic tract. And it will drop the impulse into the what? Into the thalamus. As simple as that. Now, I will wrap the board and quickly end the ascending pathway. I'll be right back. Yeah, welcome back, guys. So let's do a quick revision for the ascending pathway. So we said the ascending pathway, I'm not going to be drawing a detailed diagram again. So since you understand this from the first thing, so let's assume that this is the skin. So someone thrusted with a knife, nail, or anything. So I said right here, we are going to have a nerve cell here. So, and the nerve cell will receive the impulse onto its receptive dendrite. From there to the receptive dendron, and from the receptive dendron to the cell body. From the cell body is going to take the impulse into the what? Into a place, and that place is the spinal cord. Now, I told you that inside this place, we have a space in this spinal cord, and that space is called the Substantia gelatinosa of Rolando. So, Substantia gelatinosa of Rolando. We said what's going to happen there is that it's going to synapse with another what? With another neuron. And the neuron will take the impulse and it will cross into the white matter of the spinal cord right here. And from there, that impulse, that neuron will run upward. And when it runs upward, it forms something called the ascending pathway. And the ascending pathway is made up of a tract called the spinal thalamic tract, simply because it is running from the spinal cord and it is ending up in a structure here called the what? The thalamus. And now remember from the description of the brain we talked about, just a revision. I told you that we have the brain right here. So let me quickly bring in a sketch again. Now, the point is that I told you that here we have some structure there. And I told you the name for this structure is called the somatosensory cortex. somatosensory cortex. So I told you we have things like the leg there. So from the leg, we have the trunk, then the head of that individual, and after that, we have the fingers, then the thumbs. So we have the face. So the person's mouth as well. So we have the eyes right here. So I told you that these guys here, they are called the somatosensory cortex. So the point is that when the impulse, when it enters into the what? Into the thalamus here. So as usual, being the axon of a neuron, is going to form what? Terminal dendron and terminal dendrite. And that is going to form synaptic nerve. So the point is that the impulse will run upward like this in the ascending pathway through the perinothalamic tract into the what now? Into the terminal dendron, the terminal dendrite, and the what? And the synaptic nerve. But remember, we are transmitting the impulse of pain. So tell me, what are you going to find in this synaptic nerve again? What will be the name of that neurotransmitter? Substance P. Because I've told you, substance P is the one responsible for transmitting the impulse of pain. And afterward, it is going to find what next now? Just guess. This is the end of a neuron. What are you going to find next? Another neuron. As simple as that. So it is going to start like this now with another neuron. Now, there's something you have to think about here. This thalamus, I said I will tell you the function later. The thalamus is just like a sorting system. So the function of this thalamus is to sort out information, to sort out the impulses coming and where they are supposed to go. Now remember that I told you that this nail is passing through the person's trunk. Now tell me, the axon of this neuron, where is it going to go? Will it come to where the leg is, or where the trunk is here, or where the head is, or where the arm is, or where the fingers are, or where the face is? Obviously, it is coming down to the what? The trunk. So this is how this neuron is going to behave. That will be its diagram. And it will end up as the synaptic nerve again at this very center. As simple as that. And then it's going to receive the impulse of pain from this what? Synaptic nerve onto its receptive dendrite, then into the dendron, and from the dendron, it's going to go into the cell body, from cell body into the axon, and the axon will take that impulse to the what? To the somatosensory cortex, and it is coming to this side. Simply because the person is thrusted through the what? Through the trunk. Now let's assume that it is the person's leg. Let's say the person mistakenly pressed on a nail now. Tell me, where would this impulse landed? The impulse will definitely come here. As simple as that. And when the impulse reaches this somatosensory cortex, something is going to happen. Our brain will do what? It will perceive this pain and interpret it. It will do what? It will perceive it. As simple as that. And that is the function of the what? Of the ascending pathway. And now, what about the descending pathway? Okay, how should we do this? Well, let me explain this ascending a little bit again. The point is that this neuron will go upward, end up in the thalamus, synapse with another neuron, and that other neuron will take the impulse into the somatosensory cortex to the appropriate center, and the somatosensory cortex will perceive it, and that process is called perception, as I've said earlier on, perception. Now, if you take note of something, you realize that we have how many neurons in the ascending pathway? As simple as this. The first one is right here. 1. It takes the impulse from the skin and take it down to the spinal cord, to the substantia gelatinosa of Orlando, right? So the second other neuron, it synapse with it, run into the white matter, and then ascend upwards to the thalamus, making 2. And now finally, we have one from our thalamus, which serves as a sorting system. So, and it takes up the impulse to the somatosensory cortex, and that is the third one. So it means the ascending pain pathway has 3 other neurons. So the ascending pain pathway has what? So it has rather 3 other neurons. So the first one is called the first order neuron, second one is called the second order neuron, and the third one is called the third order neuron. As simple as that. Now, let's take a look at the descending pathway. I'll be right back. Yeah, welcome back, guys. So let's quickly round this video up with the descending pathway. How should we do this? The point is that the descending pathway is actually a little bit complex. I can mention at least 15 systems that controls the descending pathway to you now. So the point is we have a lot of systems controlling the descending pathway. But if you are using one out of those 15 at least, that doesn't mean the other 14 are wrong. So I'm going to give you one for this video. But in our next video, I'm going to give you like 3 or 4. So for example now, the limbic system is controlling the what? The descending pathway. Apart from the limbic system, we have the reticular formation, the reticular system. It is also correcting the descending pathway. So apart from that, we also have things like the paraventricular gray matters. So we have things like the para-aqueductal gray matters. They call them PERI actually. So that's one which is actually controlling the descending system. And apart from that, we have things like the RNA that I told you about. So the rafenoclei magnus. It's also controlling it. The spinal dynamic tract too is also controlling it. We have a lot of system controlling the descending pathway. But for now, I'll give you just a simple one, which is sensory cortex. So you can understand the basics first. So in the next video, you're going to be getting a deep understanding to the descending pathway. And now, let's get started. Now, I told you that the impulse is already in the what? In the cerebellum. In the cerebrum rather. So I'll bring diagram of the cerebrum a little bit again. So let's quickly do this. Now, you've known that this is cerebrum. So just like the person looking at you, there's anterior view. And now the point is that we have some structures here. I've told you about that before. So, and these structures are called the what? The two thalami. So the plural for thalamus. So each of them are called the thalamus. Now, you already know that right from this junction, an ascending pathway comes into the what? Into the thalamus, and it synapse with another neuron, and that neuron takes it down to the cerebral cortex, the sensory center to be precise, just to interpret it, ending of the ascending pathway. What about the descending pathway? Just take this like this for now. The point is that the sensory cortex can send down some what? Some fibers, some neurons, and is bringing them straight up, down, into the gray matter of the spinal cord. And tell me, what is the name of this H-shaped structure? That is the gray matter. And I told you within the gray matter, we have some form of synapse there. So something that is synonymous to a synapse. So I told you that the name of that plate is called the substantial gelatinosa. Substantial gelatinosa. So I said you can add of Orlando to it if you wish, but you don't really need it, trust me. Now this is the point. We already know that we have a neuron, the first order neuron, coming into this place to synapse with another second order neuron right here, crossing to this place, forming the ascending pathway. Right? If that be the case, we know that this place is secreting something called substance P. Substance what? Substance P. And this substance P is the one responsible for carrying the impulse of pain from this neuron onto the what? Onto this second neuron, right? Now, this fiber coming from the somatosensory cortex. Somatosensory cortex. What is this going to do? This is what it is going to do. It is going to come down here and cause the production of some chemicals. And what is that chemical? The chemical rather that is going to cause the production here is called endorphin. Endo what? Endorphin. And now what is the meaning of that? Endorphin is usually from two words. The first one is the endo in front of it. The endo is from the word endogenous. Endo what? Endogenous. And the word orphin here is from the word morphine. Morphine. And now, what is the meaning of endogenous? Morphine. The word endogenous itself is from two words again. The first one is from the word endo, and endo means within. But obviously, we're talking about the human body, so this will be within the body. And the word genus is from a new word called genesis. What? Genesis. And what is the meaning of Genesis? Genesis means beginning or production. It's a chapter of the Bible that explains the formation of this world. So the word Genesis can mean formation or formed. You get the point? Now, if endorphin means endogenous morphine, it means endogenous morphine is a morphine. And morphine is what? A painkiller. A known painkiller. We all know that. So if morphine is a painkiller, if they say endogenous morphine, it means a painkiller formed within our body. As simple as that. It means our body is producing what? is producing morphine, which is a painkiller. And now some people will argue right about this. They will say, how can our body be producing a drug? And if our body is producing a drug, why do we have to take in another drug? Trust me, that is the real fact. Let me give you another example so that you can understand this. I won't dwell much on it. Now, remember hemostasis, contraction of the uterus, a positive feedback mechanism. So, during the contraction of the uterus, remember that the body is to produce oxytocin. But yet, they are still going to inject more oxytocin into the mother's blood again. The question is why? Since the mother is producing her own oxytocin, why do we have to introduce more? That is telling you that no matter what is happening right now in your body, no matter the disorder, no matter the abnormality, your body is already trying to treat itself using its own drug and mechanism. But the point is, if they can't actually work it out themselves, that is when we need to add more drugs into our body. Now, back to the board. So, the point is that, let me come back a little bit actually. The point is that this somatosensory cortex is going to send out some fibers that will cause the release of a neurotransmitter called endorphin. And we've known now from the linguistic meaning of endorphin that it is a painkiller. So this neurotransmitter, what is this going to do? It is going to be released like this, and it will block the what? It will block this neurotransmitter called the what? The substance P. It will block it, and when it blocks it, substance P, which is carrying pain, will not be able to read the secondary neuron again. And once the secondary neuron cannot take substance P, it is not going to carry the impulse of pain again. And when it is not carrying the impulse of pain, it means no impulse will be going up into the thalamus. And if there is no impulse in the thalamus, no impulse will be reaching the somatosensory cortex, and then there will be no perception of pain. So the person will not feel pain again. And this process is called modulation. And I told you from the beginning of this class that modulation is just the reduction of pain perception. Now, we've reduced the perception of pain by using a chemical called endorphin to block substance P, which is transmitting pain impulse. As simple as that. And that is the pain pathway. In our next class, we will talk about the physiology of pain. But let me quickly give a recap on the descending pathway. The descending pathway can come from different centers. Example is the somatosensory cortex. So we can find this system now, somatosensory cortex. So modulating pain in a textbook called the Burka membrane actually. Yes, Burka membrane will tell you that the somatosensory cortex can also bring about the modulation of pain. But there is some textbook like this textbook, Dutin. Dutin will give some other things like the PAG, the PVG that I told you about in the introduction to the brain. So the point is, different system controls the modulation of pain. So in our next video, we'll be exploring them very well. So a quick recap again. The somatosensory center will send out some fibers as neuron, and they will eventually lead to the what? Production of something called what? Endorphin. And the endorphin means endogenous morphine. That is a morphine, a painkiller, produced or formed within the body. And that morphine will stop what? Substance P. It is going to act against it. It will tell it to stop moving on to the second neuron. And once the substance P cannot move to the second neuron, then there will be no pain transmission to the brain, and the person will be feeling less pain or no pain completely. And that will be the end of the class for today. In our next class, which is likely to be the last video on this pain series, so we'll be talking about the physiology of pain. All these things, they'll be happening in a deeper sense. So I would advise you to understand the pain pathway very well before coming into the physiology of pain. Because if you don't understand the pain pathway, you have tough time understanding the physiology of pain. And we won't be using complicated diagrams like this again. We'll be using some kind of just charts and line and stripes to understand things. So if you don't know that we are going to be using structures like this for neural in this class, you might be in trouble. So that's the reason why I should get this thing very well right now. So see you next time, guys. I wish you all the best.